Garden of Alameda, Nephilim Training Corps Part 2. Welcome back. Today, we are going to cover Nephilim history. This is merely a very brief overview to help you understand where we all come from. There are many events that have been turning points for the Nephilim, but we will be focusing only on 4 today. They are the war in heaven, the fall of Eve, the attack on Babel, the Babel cataclysm. In a realm beyond earthly perception, the war in heaven marked a pivotal chapter in the celestial saga. This cosmic conflict erupted when divine ideals clashed, pitting angelic factions against each other in a battle over the destiny of humanity and the principles of free will and obedience. The charge for the throne. In the pre-existence, a grand assembly of humanity was convened by God to discuss their earthly journey and eventual return to heaven. The first proposal came from Satan, who suggested a strict adherence to rules for everyone on earth, ensuring no soul would be lost. God considered this but sought alternative ideas. Christ stepped forward, offering to bear humanity's sins, giving them the choice to return to heaven. God favored Christ's plan, leading to a division among the gathered souls. 1/3 aligned with Christ, another third remained neutral, and the last third, influenced by Satan's disguised resentment over potential lost souls, grew discontented. The beginning of the fall. Satan, consumed by jealousy and a desire for power, incited a rebellion against God. Christ and Archangel Michael led the first third in defense, while the neutral third sought refuge. During this strife, 144,000 souls emerged to shield the neutrals. After Satan's defeat and his follower's banishment, God honored the 144,000 for their bravery. They were designated as true Nephilim, tasked with safeguarding humanity's free will by bearing the brunt of its harshest consequences, defending the vulnerable and reprimanding the malevolent. God then instructed the archangel to appoint generals for the impending apocalypse. Gabriel chose Eve as the general of death, with the power over life and death. Raphael selected Padma as the general of famine, able to render lands barren or bountiful. Phanuel appointed Abdul-Majid as the general of pestilence, immune to all diseases. And Michael chose Blue as the general of war, endowed with the ability to incite or quell great passion among people. Mistranslations. The King James Version of the Bible, translated over 32 times from its original Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew texts, contains a few notable mistranslations. Key among these is the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Rather than harbingers of doom, they are, in truth, the 4 generals of the armies of God, directly tied to our forces. For example, Sergeant Major Wilson is the actual general of war. Another significant misinterpretation involves the angels in Sodom. Commonly misconstrued as a censure of homosexuality, the true transgression being condemned was sexual assault, an unholy act, and one of the 4 cardinal sins. When it comes to the omission of the Apocrypha, the exclusion of these texts from canonical scripture is often attributed to their content, which may have been self-incriminating for the translators. These writings contain insights and narratives that potentially challenge or contradict the perspectives and practices of those responsible for translation and compilation. Additionally, the Dead Sea Scrolls, now widely known, were found alongside the remains of a devoted human ally, the Nephilim. This individual, a long-standing collaborator, was entrusted with these scrolls, underscoring their significance and the trust placed in human Nephilim alliances. The 4 cardinal sins. The Book of Enoch, excluded from mainstream scripture as one of the Apocrypha, defines the 4 cardinal sins. These sins, demanding immediate judgment, include murder, widely acknowledged in mainstream scriptures, and 3 others often overseen by the judge's bloodline, whose role in extracting and reliving memories from all involved takes a severe toll on their mental health. Child abuse, defined as harmful actions by a parent with no disciplinary benefit to the child, requires intervention, sometimes from a mother Nephilim. Unrepentant offenders face severe consequences, including culling or sterilization. Indentured servitude, often misunderstood, is defined in Enoch 97 as an exploitative relationship where employers fail to adequately support their employees, leading to deplorable living conditions. Originally a sin of angelic masters, it's a significant transgression requiring rectification. Nephilim do not seek dominion over humanity. Instead, we offer our guidance and assistance tirelessly, resorting to stern measures only when all other avenues have been exhausted. The fall of Eve. Eve, the first Nephilim, was fashioned in the Garden of Eden, shortly after Adam. The familiar tale of the garden is brief but crucial. Tempted by Satan, Eve's naivety, not weakness, led her to prematurely access the tree of life. This machina creation, far from being a mere tree with an apple, was a repository of vast knowledge meant to aid God's work on earth. Adam and Eve, still in their youthful forms, were meant to approach this repository only after reaching full maturity. Satan's influence hastened this process, inadvertently thwarting one of God's key plans. Consequently, God, to protect them from the destruction that his presence could cause to their mortal forms, had no choice but to send them from the garden. Eve, belonging to the judge's bloodline among the Nephilim, was confronted with the tragic death of her son at the hands of her only other son. Bound by her Nephilim nature, she faced the daunting task of passing judgment upon her surviving son. In a gesture of mercy, God, accompanied by Metatron, intervened to deliver a judgment aimed at providing Eve some solace. Despite attempts by God and Adam to comfort her, Eve entered a profound state of grief, predominantly marked by intense anger. Over 3 days, she developed a belief that such tragedies were a consequence of the soul's confinement within mortal flesh. Her critique extended to the diverse lineages that had emerged from the cradle machina. However, her frustration eventually led to a disavowal of all humanity. In a definitive break from her past, Eve renounced her identity, re-emerging as Lilith. She established a society primarily comprising women, both mortal and immortal. Her actions towards men were hostile. She alternated between killing and enslaving them. This enslavement was partly driven by the understanding that a Nephilim's immortality is compromised without a bonded mate. Thus, the first Nephilim's downfall was sealed, impeding the formation of God's army in its earliest stages. The consequences of Eve's fall. Lilith's millennial quest to enslave humanity faced persistent resistance from the remaining Nephilim, whose commitment to preserving free will was paramount. It was only through sheer mercy that Lilith had not been annihilated by them. Determined to sway every discovered female Nephilim to her cause, Lilith met an unexpected setback in Blue Wilson. The turning point occurred on the night of August 14, 2013, when L. Louise, a devotee of Lilith, kidnapped the sons of Michelle Sutton, a mother Nephilim and trusted confidant of Blue. Responding decisively, Blue spearheaded a rescue operation, successfully liberating the children from Lilith's stronghold. The attack on Babel. The scriptural account of the Tower of Babel suffers from a narrative limited by the primitive understanding of the people at the time. Far from an attempt to physically reach God, the tower was actually a mali machina, constructed under the guidance of Azazel, one of the fallen angels expelled from heaven. This mali machina was engineered to forge a portal directly back to heaven, but the real peril was not in human pride. The design, while potentially functional, was a deception by Azazel, and had it been activated, no mortal on Earth would have survived the process. The ensuing catastrophe would have played into Satan's hands, threatening existence itself at a molecular level. On the day the mali machina was activated, despite numerous warnings of its destructive potential, the mortals proceeded, catching the Nephilim off guard. The majority of male Nephilim, who were coincidentally engaged in practice maneuvers, led a swift assault in response. Meanwhile, the majority of female Nephilim in the vicinity, along with reinforcements who arrived as the event unfolded, concentrated their efforts on mitigating the blast. They understood the devastating potential of the machina, that if unchecked, its energy could fracture the very earth itself. Their collective actions were pivotal in containing the disaster, albeit at great cost and with significant repercussions for all involved. The consequences of the attack on Babel. The activation of the Tower of Babel had profound, unintended consequences on the remaining male Nephilim that responded. The blast disrupted their linear existence, rendering them unable to control their presence in time and space. Subsequently, they found themselves subject to unpredictable teleportations across the vast expanse of all creation, encompassing various locations and time periods. This erratic existence has inflicted considerable anguish. The inability to form lasting bonds, maintain enduring friendships, and in extreme cases, endure prolonged periods in the isolating void of space, has marked their lives with hardship. Only those among them with Voyager bloodline capabilities could navigate back to Earth under such circumstances. The psychological toll has been severe. Many have succumbed to mental health struggles, including addiction, chronic depression, and, in extreme cases, dissociative identity disorder, as a coping mechanism for their fragmented reality. In order to prevent humanity from trying it again, God was left with no other choice but to retract humanity's comprehension of basic and advanced math for millennia. Babel Cataclysm Intro. Nephilim are not infallible. In fact, we have been known to have messed up in the past quite a bit. If you can't learn from the past, you'll be doomed to repeat it, and you must always hold yourself accountable for your actions. There is no room for pride in the role of a Nephilim. Babel Cataclysm. Nephilim, despite our extraordinary capabilities, are not exempt from mistakes and unintended consequences. A significant example of this occurred in our attempt to rescue our brethren following the Babel incident, which led to unforeseen repercussions. In a unified effort at the Babel ruins, all 13 Nephilim bloodlines, representing the entire Nephilim population on Earth at that time, converged. We activated a concerted effort to bring our comrades back, but unbeknownst to us, this act inadvertently caused a temporal isolation, resulting in 437 years during which Earth existed without Nephilim. During this period, humanity faced extinction, not due to war or disease, but from an asteroid impact, a catastrophe we were not present for and unable to prevent. Witnessing Earth's devastation was a profound shock, leading to deep mourning for the lost lives, including our own families and future generations we were sworn to protect. After 144 years of this altered reality and existing in the void of space, a moment of divine intervention occurred. God, accompanied by Metatron and surrounded by the celestial choirs, illuminated the cosmos, restoring Earth to the moment before our era. This act reaffirmed our duty to uphold free will and protect humanity. Consequences of the Babel Cataclysm. In response to the events of the Babel incident and the subsequent Babel Cataclysm, a significant doctrinal shift was instituted by God regarding the Nephilim's engagement with humanity. This new directive imposed stringent limitations on the Nephilim's interactions with humans, specifically curtailing the open display of their supernatural abilities. Furthermore, the decree emphasized stricter consequences for acts of selfishness and neglect of duty among the Nephilim. This measure was designed to maintain a delicate balance between the Nephilim's roles and responsibilities and the autonomy and natural progression of human society. Following the divine interventions post-Babel, there was a noticeable shift in humanity's intellectual focus. A profound constriction occurred in the general understanding of fundamental mathematical concepts, steering scholarly pursuits more towards theology and psychology. Over time, historical accounts and narratives involving the Nephilim underwent significant transformations. These stories, once rooted in the interactions and experiences with Nephilim, gradually morphed into what is now recognized as mythology in modern understanding. This evolution of perception and storytelling reflects a distancing from the concrete realities of the Nephilim's existence and influence as human society reoriented its intellectual and cultural frameworks. In conclusion, Nephilim, despite their extraordinary abilities, are not exempt from errors. History has recorded several instances where misjudgments have been made. It's crucial to learn from these past mistakes to avoid repeating them. Accountability for one's actions is a fundamental aspect of being a Nephilim, where there is little space for pride. Understanding and acknowledging our fallibility is essential in fulfilling our roles responsibly.